The first time that I ever heard anybody say axe instead of ask was in this Christmas episode of Futurama. The joke was that Fry mentions Christmas, but everybody in the future literally calls it Xmas, and they think he's saying it in like a funny, old-timey kind of way.
You must be using an archaic pronunciation.
And then Leela says it's kind of like how you still say ask instead of axe. So in the future, I guess everybody says axe. Axe has become the dominant way to say that word. I thought this was pure absurdity. I thought it was something that Futurama just made up to be silly. I did not realize there were real people who pronounced this word that way. Until I was an adult and I encountered a coworker who said it. And my first thought was, what the fuck, was that a Futurama reference? But this person really didn't seem like the kind of person to even watch that show. It was like an older woman who okay, wait. No. Now, I now realize this pronunciation is associated with the American South and especially with the black population. Though this particular linguistic variation didn't originate with black people or with Southerners. The axe variant has been around for a pretty long time. And it wasn't generally considered a mistake, it was just a different way of saying or spelling the word. Kind of like how British and American spellings are different, but we don't consider one of them wrong and the other right. There's just more than one way to say and spell certain words. When the sounds within a word change, it's called a metathesis, which happens all over the place in little ways that you probably don't notice and think about because it's usually pretty subtle. More specifically, this is called an adjacent metathesis, because it's two letters that are right next to each other, adjacent to each other, changing places. You can hear some other examples in common misspeaks or mispronunciations, like when people say prescription instead of prescription, or when children say aminal instead of animal. That's an example of how this kind of thing happens. Or there's another southern thing, which is when people say purdy instead of pretty. Well, they're swapping the sounds around, but to them, they think of it as the same word for the same concept. They're just saying the word in a new way by jumbling up the sounds in their mind. Another example that we don't notice because it already happened in the past and then became the new norm is the word bird, which seemingly used to be written as brid, but changed over time into being written as bird instead, and we don't really know why. It kind of reminds me how in British spellings there are words like centre or theatre that end with re, even though, to be honest, and don't tell the Americans I said this, the ER spelling does make more sense. I mean, we don't say century or theatre, right? So I wonder if bird used to be pronounced the same way that we say it now, and what happened is that people just started spelling it in a more phonetic way by saying, oh, the IR more matches the noises coming out of our mouths. Or maybe the word bird used to be pronounced differently, who knows? It might have just been a jumble of noises, a bird, bird. Like I'm trying to imagine. Get the bird, get the bird, get the bird, bird, bird. The funny thing about ask and axe is that if you say it quickly and I'm not really paying close attention, I barely notice the difference and I could easily miss it. Let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. It really just blurs together. Another linguistic quirk, or pair of quirks, that is associated with the black population is the words his self and their self, used instead of the more traditional himself and themselves. At some point, I remember thinking about this for a while and realizing this just makes more sense. Why don't we say their selves? It's the self and it belongs to you. It's your self, their self, his self. So I started actually using these words, and over time I got used to it. You might notice me saying their self or their selves throughout my writing and videos. It's just normal to me now. And now when I look back at the word themselves, well, that just kind of seems stupid. I feel like this is the word that should be considered improper. Interestingly, herself works both ways. You don't need to change that one over, because him and her reuse the, if we say it's his, so give it to him, it's hers, so give it to her. We use her in both cases for that one, so it just is already, it already works like this. The association with black people probably isn't fair, by the way. It probably is partially related to people having a negative perception of black people and associating them with, mispronunciations. Even if there were a bunch of white people who were also mispronouncing the same word, I can see how, there would be a bias in that association. Then again, it could also be explained by, if a certain quality becomes really popular in the South, where there's black and white people, and then all of the Southern people move north, where there's not very many black people, then the perception from their point of view would be some white people have this quality and all of the black people do. So it would be associated more strongly with the black people. I can see, in theory, okay, whatever. At this one place I worked, we had a black woman coworker, and she said axe, and other people around would kind of stop and point it out to make fun of. And at first I was like, okay. I mean, sure. I guess it's just kind of a normal thing to have a laugh about how other people talk when they're from different places. Like, all the Tuesday and the bottle water thing. And I get Americans commenting about the way that I pronounce certain words still. But I feel like there's a certain subtext when it's about black people that isn't there for other groups, where it's not just seen as an accent or a different way of speaking, like a regional thing. It's more treated like, oh, black people are just so uneducated that they can't speak properly. And once I thought about that and started observing the way that a lot of these interactions played out, I did become uncomfortable with it, because it's like, why can a Scottish person say canny instead of cannot? And that's not wrong, that's just like, oh, he has a Scottish accent. But then a black person says axe, and we're like, that's wrong, it's pronounced ask. Like, I feel like something is going wrong in that. So I eventually told people, like, I don't think we should make fun of her for this. I feel like we're contributing to something negative here.